Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Splunk Tech Talks for App Dev. We're going to kick the session off momentarily. Just a couple of notices in the beginning. First of all, thank you for joining this presentation between Splunk and Red Hat to hear about the partnership. The presentation will be recorded and available later via email. And please feel free to ask questions throughout. We'll answer them later during the Q&A session. So just a quick disclaimer, throughout the presentation, we may make forward-looking statements regarding future plans, but these are not guarantees. So in this session, we'll be presenting the Red Hat event-driven Ansible and Splunk integration, all of its features, and the use cases that you can take advantage of. My name is Robert Rossetti. I'm a partner engineer here at Splunk. I work together with our partners to develop and ship new integrations with the platform. And joining me today is Daphne Mendoza. Please go ahead and introduce yourself, Daphne.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks for having me. I'm a principal product manager in the Ansible business unit here at Red Hat, and I cover event-driven Ansible, network automation, and also configuration as code.
Thanks, Daphne. So the agenda for this session, we're going to cover an overview of why Splunk and the Ansible automation platform fit together. We're going to discuss the end-to-end solution architecture. We'll be covering use cases, including automated security response and addressing alerts. We're going to show an end-to-end demo, and we'll finish with a Q&A session and some key takeaways. So Daphne, would you like to go ahead and give us an overview of the partnership and some of the collaboration we have?
Of course. Well, this is a very long relationship that Red Hat and Cisco have established. It might be more than 10 years old. We started with network automation, with some of the use cases for the operating systems. And as the partnership and technologies evolved, we introduced also event-driven Ansible a few years ago. And recently this year, we partnered with Splunk to support an integration to integrate Splunk technologies to have an automated response for the events that are coming from Splunk. So we'll have more information here. I think this session is going to be very rich. We'll have a demo to showcase how this is going to look like. But basically, the partnership keeps growing. And I think it's adding more and more value for our joint customers.
Well put. Thank you, Daphne.
Let me go through this, because I think it summarizes the value that you get with integration, right? Basically, the challenge here is not only that there is an incident or that something breaks, but what do you do after that? And most of the idle times are not from the moment of something breaks or you get the alert or you get a ticket, but also figuring out the issue, the right person working on it, then the troubleshooting, the triage, and then to get this system fully operational. And anyone that works in operations knows that sometimes you'll have two incidents at the same time. Sometimes you just fixed an issue and then something else breaks. So it's a forever running cycle. But the goal here is to shorten this time, because we know that IT and the workloads are getting more and more mission critical. Now, with all the applications that are coming and with AI, this is even more relevant, I would say. Now here, I think this one summarizes the partnership. Right, Robert, what's Splunk providing? And I cover the Ansible automation side of the remediation loop.
Yeah, it's a great question. So why combine the Splunk and Ansible automation platforms? So Splunk brings monitoring and alerting capabilities to the table, but it cannot do remediation for all use cases on its own. So oftentimes these processes would be manual or only involve some limited or custom automation that the user has to build themselves. But now with Ansible, we can tackle the problem from beginning to end.
Something we see as well is a lot of scripting or engineers that are building their own processes, their own automations. The goal of Ansible is also to centralize this know-how. So anyone that's getting this alerting will see the same behavior. I think consistency is critical in operations. And the more when we are talking about automation, having this centralized approach across the teams and across individuals is critical to truly succeed.
Exactly. So you all already know what exactly Splunk is, or you wouldn't be here today, of course. But let's think about it in the context of the solution that we've built. So Splunk gathers the metrics, traces, logs, and events that you need to decide when and what actions to take. And so working with Ansible, you can automate response to the alerts in your environment based on the data, and this helps you extend your use cases even further. Splunk also has AI features such as predictive analytics in ITSI, the MCP server for AI agents, and the Splunk AI assistant, which all help you to craft your alert conditions and actions more efficiently. And so when we're thinking about observability offerings with Splunk, this diagram shows how all the data is collected and feeds into the different services for on-prem, cloud, and hybrid environments. And then we also get to see how it feeds into ITSI, which is a really key point of the integration. And so when we think about security and observability use cases with Splunk, it's often presented as a maturity journey over time. So you start with the base of foundational visibility, and you grow towards optimized outcome for your business and its users. With the Ansible integration in the mix, it starts to add value when we get to the proactive response to situations. So whether you're facing security or observability related issues, Splunk can identify them, and then event-driven Ansible is there to fix them. So in terms of security, the number one problem that analysts face in the SOC is a high alert volume. There's just too many of them for the analysts to deal with each of them hands-on every day. So automation is deeply critical to success. And so the questions we want to think about are, once you get an alert, how do you respond to it? What are the actions you have in your tool belt to respond and ultimately lower the mean time to response and resolution? And then afterwards, how are you getting the data back to continuously improve your security posture and the way you're responding? And then for Splunk ITSI, in terms of the observability world, the challenges that you face are collecting data that gets you to produce valuable signals quickly, aligning the IT solutions you have with your business outcomes, and then ultimately growing towards proactive outage prevention, which requires using all of the tools and data that you have available. And in the demo later on, we'll show how you can address each of these points even more efficiently with this integration. So Daphne, how about you tell us about event-driven Ansible?
Well, event-driven Ansible, probably the audience already knows about event-driven automation. Basically, it's the ability to trigger an automated response based on events that you are receiving. Event-driven Ansible is our solution that's part of Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform. Basically, we provide this capability to respond to events and trigger automated responses, and it is part of the same solution, meaning that Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform as a solution includes everything that's needed for our enterprise customers to develop automation content, manage and scale it, and basically have a centralized solution that's the glue of all these responses against different technologies. meaning networking use cases, automation of applications, of cloud, now AI workloads as well. So it's very flexible, and we provide all these capabilities to have enterprise-ready automation. Event-driven Ansible is part of the whole solution. It's a server that has all the technologies, all the capabilities to respond to events. Now, how does it look like? It basically observes the incidents. We'll have these forever running services that will be listening to webhooks or to event buses and to enterprise systems such as Splunk. That's the architecture is intended to connect with enterprise systems. So it's basically always observing, waiting for these events. Once the event is received, it has the flexibility to let operators decide. You can codify the response and have all these AFL conditions. We are going to see an example and how you want to respond. The response step is always triggered to the automation controller that is part of Ansible Automation Platform. That response could be a playbook or could be a workflow of playbooks where you can codify multiple tasks on how you want to trigger that response. And in the demo, you will see multiple connection points on how this can look like. Now, if you learned about Ansible, you probably know the playbooks and YAML. The language is pretty simple. It's basically how an engineer will trigger these flows. You have these sequences when you codify step by step how you want to execute something. In the case of the rule book, here we are putting conditions. Basically, you have this event source, and you define, in this case, is the EDA webhook. So we are listening to a webhook in a specific host and port, and we have all these rule sets with individual rules. You can describe what's the name of the rule, what it is doing, what's the condition you're waiting, and how you want to respond to it. In this case, the action is that we are going to run a workflow template, and we are specifying the name, which organization, and what we want to do to respond to this event. It could be an incident, could be a provisioning event. It's very flexible. Now, it also has this mechanism to throttle events, to group the events by key, so you can have a lot of flexibility in how you are defining these conditional rules to respond and to listen to these events. Now, I think here we enter into the funniest part of this session, right? Is how the joint solution work, and this is the demo that we are going to see. Now, let's cover the Splunk part first. Robert, what is Splunk doing with all the infrastructure?
Yeah, so Splunk kicks off this demo flow and how the integration works. Whether your data is coming from cloud, on-premise, or a hybrid environment, it's all logged in the Splunk platform. And then an automated alert, depending on whatever conditions you set, will trigger the custom action, which is provided by our add-on, the Red Hat add-on. And that sends the data to the event-driven Ansible event source plugin, which will read the data either from a webhook or a Kafka topic. And then from there, it gets into the Ansible side of things. Daphne?
Yes, and here, just a disclaimer, event-driven Ansible is not a monitoring and observability solution. Ansible Automation Platform is a very flexible automation solution. So for this use case, we heavily depend on the capabilities that Splunk has to offer. I think here the better together story is very clear. You are having all these rich events. These are actionable events, the ones that we are truly expecting. And here we are listening to that event. In this case, when we get an actionable event, that event is going to go through all this rulebook process to have all these user-specified actions. Optionally, and step 4 here, that's the connection with ITSMs. We mentioned that because a very, very common action when we receive alerts or incidents or anomalies is reporting it, connecting to an ITSM solution, such as ServiceNow, opening a ticket, adding the information that you have at the moment, and then triggering an action. That action could be gathering more information and enriching the ticket itself, notifying to individuals or groups. It could be connecting to a chat. And also the other action could be just remediate. There are very simple use cases we saw, for example, in retail, point of sales, or in some manufacturer systems where you don't really want to troubleshoot. Sometimes you want to restart a container, restart an application, and if the incident comes back multiple times, then you want to have some extra troubleshooting step. So there are very common remediation actions that you can trigger automatically, and that could be done through the job templates or workflow templates. Now, there is an extra step here, and it's adding intelligence into the process, right? Splunk can add extra AI capabilities, Robert. What can Splunk add on top of the traditional capabilities?
Right. So AI in the Splunk platform includes the Splunk AI Assistant for writing SPL queries that will help you analyze your data better and more naturally to identify the conditions that you want to alert on. We also support AI agents via the Splunk MCP server, so you can interact with the platform automatically or through natural language prompts. And Splunk also has predictive analytics machine learning in the ITSI premium product, which allows you to predictively identify problems or situations with your IT services that you'd want to alert on ahead of time before they become a full-blown problem. And how does Red Hat add AI?
Yeah, when you mentioned ITSI, I got excited, sorry. Because I think that preventing the incident is what you truly want to do, right? Before you have a downtime, what if you can just detect the anomaly? What if you can just prevent the incident and respond to it by adding more resources or by notifying, by triggering an automated action? In our case, I think the product keeps evolving, so we expect more. What we have right now is, it has been for a while already, is the ability to generate automation content with Ansible Lightspeed. And also Ansible, as it's very flexible, it can connect with systems. So we can connect, and we have that AIOps use case to connect with an AI inference server and query for more information and connect with the specific models to identify what's the error. We have seen some errors that need further information to be translated to a human. So it can be done through these inference servers, and also Ansible provides Ansible Lightspeed to generate an automated response. So meaning that you do not always need to have these pre-coded playbooks as part of the workflow. And here we have the add-on, Robert. This is the new shiny integration.
Exactly, yeah. So we've published the Red Hat event-driven Ansible add-on for Splunk on Splunk Base. It's free to download, and it's compatible with Splunk Enterprise and Splunk Cloud versions 9.3 and up. So even your Splunk 10.0 and 10.1 versions can run it. And it's free to download. It works with Splunk Core, Splunk ITSI, and Splunk ES, but you don't need those for it to work. So let's talk about how exactly the integration works, the technical details behind the scenes. So sending events requires configuration ahead of time, depending whether events will be sent via a webhook post request over HTTP or to a Kafka topic for consumption by the event-driven Ansible source plugin from Kafka. You just plug in the parameters for your particular environment, and then you can use this basically account configuration in any of the alert actions later. And so the event source plugin on the event-driven Ansible side is just a Python module that comes out of the box from the ansible.eda collection. So you don't have to write any custom Python code for this to work. you just configure it with details from your environment and using YAML. So what features does the add-on provide? Well, one is a custom SPL command that provides you a lot of flexibility. So anywhere in Splunk you're running SPL search, you can use this Kafka publish command that the add-on provides. You just specify the topic and the environment that you would have configured beforehand, and you can send those search results straight to Kafka. There's also an alert action for Splunk Core. And so that will automatically take the results of a saved search. And you can either send just one, the first result, or many in a batched JSON or plain text format. With Splunk ITSI, there's an episode review action that can be run ad hoc or automatically in response to your ITSI episodes, which is a collection of notable events related to your IT services. And these alerts are triggered on conditions that take into account your overall service health or key KPIs that affect business outcomes. And that's part of what we'll see in the demo later. The add-on also provides a custom adaptive response action for enterprise security. And what those are is they're triggered by automated tasks with from notable events or using the results from correlation searches. And what these actions can do in general is gather further information or invoke APIs to ultimately speed up your incident response and remediation process. And you can trigger this manually or ad hoc from the incident review page. And so related to the add-on are Ansible collections. These are separate packages, but they really help with this end-to-end solution. The Ansible collection for enterprise security is basically a wrapper for the Splunk ES API. And what it will allow you to do is from an Ansible playbook that might have been triggered by this workflow, you can write data back to Splunk. For example, the output of a playbook, and that will allow you to go full circle and get the data back so that your investigations can be more complete. And this will save you time when you're thinking about writing these playbooks. This is provided for you out of the box to make it easier to interact with the Splunk APIs. And then we're also working on an Ansible collection for ITSI. And so that will do a similar thing where the Splunk ITSI API is wrapped by these Ansible actions provided from the collection. And this features API calls for episode management, to manage services and KPIs, and to manage your correlation searches and aggregation policies. So for example, with episode management, if an episode triggers the custom action sending the data, later on in the playbook, you could use this collection and the actions it provides to write comments back to the episode to update the status of it based on the output of the playbook and what happened in your environment. So let's talk about use cases now. How do we put these really cool features to work for us? Daphne?
I think overall, when we are talking about automation, we have this premise, this vision of start small, but think big. The more modularity you infuse into your automation use cases, the better. I think about reusability. For example, the ITSM use case is something that you can reuse because everything will need a ticket at some point. Improving service tickets, I think, is a very low risk, high value use case. Certificate management might be the most popular we have. We had a lot of meetings with customers where certificate management is becoming more and more relevant, mostly to proactively rotate and update the certificates. And that's also to enhance security, so the times are getting shorter. It's no longer a possibility that you have 10-year-old certificates in production. Remediation as well, I just mentioned restarting some applications, but also detecting and fixing drift, fixing some slow performance or outages. We have seen also some disaster recovery scenarios with EDA triggering some automation, and also user management. I think that's one of these very common repetitive tasks that you want to automate like right now. But adds a lot of value and frees a lot of time. And also is something that needs to be consistent or has to follow the same steps every single time. And there is a lot of human error for all of these use cases. And here we have the think big, Robert.
Yeah, so when we're looking at the Splunk use case and maturity journey, now you can see how the proactive response and unified workflow use cases will utilize this integration. So, for example, detecting and prioritizing vulnerabilities and then responding to them, aligning IT and business requirements with your service monitoring and remediating issues that affect your key KPIs. And lastly, you can think about standardizing your practices across teams. They can use same or similar playbooks and alerting conditions and response patterns using this integration. So now we're going to show a demo, and recall previously the architecture diagram that we showed you. That's also reflective of this demo environment. First, it's going to show our demo web app, which is utilizing microservices, and those are being monitored in Splunk ITSI. Daphne, are you ready to share that demo for us?
Yes, I'll do that, and let me share the tab. I need to restart it. Okay, let me see. Oh, okay, here we go.
Great, so we're showing the add-on and the microservice app that we'll be monitoring with Splunk. And then next we'll take a look how this looks when it's being monitored in the ITSI dashboards. So right now you can see all the KPIs are healthy, and we have a correlation search that's going to be monitoring a mix of the key KPIs. And then we're going to configure the add-on on this next page so that it's connected to our Ansible environment in case any of the alert actions need to fire. So now the KPIs have dipped. There's a service outage. We're seeing a critical state for the KPIs that we're monitoring because the gateway's down. And this has created an ITSI episode. And so from this episode, we can see how you can run the ad hoc custom action, or it could be automated. This next pane is going to show how it's configured. And then once that's been run, it's going to send data to the Ansible platform.
Now we are going to see first how you can configure this event-driven Ansible rulebook activation, but also you will see how it automatically responds. So first, we are using for this demo event streams. Think that when you're connecting multiple webhooks, you will have to open multiple ports or multiple URLs to connect into event-driven Ansible. So we introduced event streams some months ago, almost a year ago. But basically here you have the ability to aggregate multiple webhooks into a single entry point, and we will route the events internally. So if you can see the details, I would say overall the platform, you have the ability to see or to read the webhook URL that you are going to configure into Splunk. But also you have all this information like last event received, when it was created, all this login information, how many events we received, and so on. So here in this case, to see the latest event, you can disable and you can see specifically the payload. This is particularly useful when you are developing, but at some point when it is fully ready, you don't want to inspect all the events. You will have just the rulebook activation running. Now, in this case, in the rulebook activation, here is where you can create the webhook. And this is the Splunk activation. Something that we provide also is the ability to connect at different levels, like organizations, groups, and how we interconnect or how we get the rulebooks is through the project. So basically, rulebooks will be in a GitHub repo. They can also be local. In this case, our rulebook pet service is coming from an external project in Git. And here we are linking the rulebook activation with event stream. If you can see here is the host, the port, and we are using this plugin, the webhook. The plugin could be also Kafka, it could be a cloud plugin, so we have multiple ways to connect. Now, Robert presented the application. This is the status before we had the incident. So you will see that we have one rulebook running, but it had 0 events. In this case, we had one event, and that triggered the response. Now, that response, as I mentioned, is triggered by the controller. That's part of the same product, same Ansible automation platform. So we can see in the rule audit that there was an activation, and it was that the job was launched. And in the launch playbook, when start signal received, we can see also the event tab to see what happened. So we can audit the payload of the event, actionable event that triggered an action, but also we can audit the job that was executed. So here it ran this job template. It was to restart the container. We can see that the job was successful, when it ran, and all the details. What's the playbook that was executed? And in this case, the application is restarted because, and it's already green again, closing the full cycle. Now, these are the resources. Oh, sorry, Robert, to get us started. I'll let you cover this.
Okay. I did want to let the users know that the add-on is available today, and they could go ahead and download the integration from Splunkbase. We've also published a Splunkbase Splunk Lantern article that will walk you through how to set it up, give you some ideas about using it, and then you can start thinking about building your Ansible rulebook. Daphne, tell us more about the start small, think big mentality.
Well, here to create the use case, you have to think of what you can do immediately, right? We just mentioned just obtaining more information. You're not remediating yet. The renew the certificates is a little more complex, but you can test that in development, then to roll out to production. Just notifying, I would say, is a very common use case. Getting these alerts into different channels, WebEx, Teams, Slack. And also can grow in scope and sophistication once you have this grasp into the technology. And I would say constantly also watching these automated actions to take place. It's really helpful to also have use cases that are low risk and can provide a lot of value to to multiple teams, ideally.
So that concludes our presentation and demo, and now we have time to do some Q&A questions. So I'll kick us off. Someone asked, does the add-on work with Splunk Enterprise on-premise or Splunk Cloud? And the answer is that it works with both versions 9.3 and up for Splunk Enterprise and Cloud. You'll just have to configure the networking components to make sure that your Splunk environment can talk to your event-driven Ansible environment. Here's a question for you, Daphne. Do you have to pay to use event-driven Ansible?
No, I would say overall, the Ansible Automation Platform has this subscription model. This is by automated node, but event-driven Ansible is part of the whole solution, so we don't need an extra, or we don't charge extra for this capability.
Great. Another question that came in is, which Splunk products does this integration work with? And the answer is Splunk Core, Splunk ITSI, and Splunk Enterprise Security all have features provided from this integration, but you don't need any of the premium products for this to work. Here's another question for you, Daphne. What is the difference between an Ansible playbook and an Ansible rulebook?
I will cover that briefly. Basically, they use a very similar language, YAML. It's a way to document or codify your operations, but the biggest difference, I would say, is on that event-driven Ansible covers conditional, so the rule books will have these rules, so if-else conditions, but the playbooks will just document this series of actions, the sequence of actions that you want to run. So it's sequential, but not with conditions.
Here's another question for Splunk is, what Splunk server component, for example, the search head heavy forwarder, should the add-on be installed in? That's a great question. It should be installed in your search head, because that's what's going to be running the searches and then running these alert actions. It doesn't have to be installed on an indexer like some add-ons would be, because it's not ingesting data, it's just providing these custom actions. Here's another question for Red Hat. Is the Red Hat automation the same or similar to Red Hat Insights, Daphne?
I would say they are different. Red Hat Insights is intended for RHEL systems, so it's like a management solution for RHEL. And it has some automations. We have introduced some use cases when Insights connects through event-driven Ansible, for example, and it can automatically patch. Insights will provide, for example, a list of CVEs, so it has some observability capabilities. But I would say the automation solution that has automation for multiple technologies, not only RHEL servers, is Ansible Automation Platform. So I think Insights has some automation capabilities, but these are focused on specific technologies. It's great for security purposes as well and for observability.
Okay. I'm seeing a couple of questions about the presentation overall. There will be a recorded version of this for you to get and watch later offline, and the slides will be made available. Let's see. So another question is, what authentication mechanisms do Splunk and EDA use to talk to each other? The answer to that is you're using a JSON token to make the webhook work. And then for Kafka, you're also using a token for your Splunk environment to send that data to Kafka. And then another token for consuming that data from Kafka via the event source plugin. Another great question is event-driven Ansible compatible with Splunk Enterprise? And also, would it be compatible with Splunk Cloud? And the answer to that is yes. It's agnostic in terms of how it's consuming that data. It's just coming in through the event source plugins, which are basically just Python modules, and they can consume that data as long as the networking components are configured for it to open up the port, for example, for the webhook, or to consume data from Kafka. And then lastly, I'm seeing, is ITSI required to integrate Ansible automation with Splunk, and what functionality do you lose if you're not using ITSI? So while we did focus on ITSI in the presentation and demo, it's not required. the functionality that you have is still basically the same functionality from the alert action perspective. You can run the custom alert action in Splunk Core and send the data, or you can run the adaptive response action in Splunk Enterprise Security. And that's still sending the data in the same way it would be from ITSI. You just don't have the benefits of the IT service monitoring, the KPIs, and the notable events and episode review page that you would get. So it's basically just the triggering conditions will be different. All right, I think that's all of the questions that I see. Daphne, did we miss anything relating to questions on the Red Hat side?
No, I think it was all covered. Just to emphasize also the integration points, the case of EDA, it's listening. We provide also the Ansible.EDA collection has a set of generic plugins. That's where we have webhooks and Kafka plugins. So it can be connecting with different systems. And now the connection could be we pull events or by pushing the events into EDA. You also mentioned the Splunk.es collection, right? When you're thinking about the playbooks that are running an automation against that system, that's when you use the collections. So the automation is going both ways. Basically, with the add-on, you can listen to the events, but with the collection, you can use Ansible to automate Splunk. So you have, I would say, a double connection point. It's a double win.
Exactly. The full flow of data coming from Splunk and then into Ansible, and then it can go back. So we will plan to be at Red Hat Summit to talk about this solution. Daphne, you want to tell us about that?
Yes, basically call for papers is open. So if you have your automations, and by the way, we had a customer that was asking all these questions and they are trying already the integration. So they are trying the add-on this week. But if you have your automation use cases, please submit your session if you're interested in sharing. Basically, this event is going to happen next year. It's our Red Hat Summit. There's going to be a lot of cool sessions, a lot of automation stories. I always learn more and more every time I listen from customers and what they are doing. And the call for papers is open right now. So the deadline is until November 12th. If you have cool automation stories, please submit. And if you have Splunk and Ansible stories, even better.
All right, and please continue the conversation on our Splunk community blog. You can ask questions. We'll be there to help you figure out how to use the integration. And you can also look around if you're having trouble setting it up or using it. There'll be people on there to help you. And thank you everyone for attending. We hope you enjoyed learning a bit more about the Splunk and Red Hat partnership, especially when it comes to Ansible and how these can help you extend your use cases.